Welcome to the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, live in the On Purpose Woman magazine and global community Facebook page. I'm Jenny Robertson, one of the hosts of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, and I'm also the founder and publisher of On Purpose Woman magazine and founder of the On Purpose Woman global community. My guest today is coach, HypnoCoach, author and founder of Sparks Hope, TammyStar Workman-Lopez. And we're talking about breaking the chains of not good enough thinking. So thanks for being here, Tammy. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
For those of you who haven't had the privilege of meeting TammyStar, let me tell you a little bit about her. Coach TammyStar has helped parents, teens, children, students, couples, and entrepreneurs set boundaries with income, relationships, and self-care. 500 plus clients testify to being able to sleep better, move better, losing weight and keeping it off, quitting smoking permanently, having beautiful communication with children and spouses, and have stopped various bad habits while learning wonderful new habits. Tammy says this is her purpose in life, and she is always amazed at her clients' bravery and results. So I think having 500 plus clients is really impressive, Tammy. And I want to know more about how you do that and how you work with your clients. But let's start with how you came to this work. You say that it's your purpose. How did you find it?
Well, it's been a lifetime. So for me, I was a child who ended up in a lot of pain and a lot of anxiety and a lot of not good enough. And I grew up that way. I believed everything I thought about, all of it was true. And I thought no matter what I did, it was not good enough. And so I found myself in my 30s dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I began to wonder, what do I do? I've done years of therapy, years of personal development. I've gotten all of my education. I've, gone to church. I've prayed. I've done everything I need to do to make myself a better person. And here I am feeling like I'm at the bottom. And I was like, why am I feeling this way? This isn't that bad. And things weren't really that bad. I was just having an emotional space, but it felt horrible. And so I said, well, I heard about hypnosis work and doing mindset work. And I also heard that it was evil spirits and mind control and terrifying. But now I began looking into it, and this was a year later, and there was so much more online. Pastors were using it. And I said, okay, so maybe who shared this with me before was incorrect. And so I began researching, I began interviewing hypnotherapists who were also faith-based. And so I knew they were coming from the right space. And I began to see one. And I began to realize this work could really be helpful. Now, initially, I wasn't getting the help I needed. But as I began to learn and get it, I'm very analytical and I was very frightened. So I was really resistant. So I had to learn what I needed to really get that information and get that I was creating my own negative programming. I believed these things to my core. I knew they were true. And I had to shift that belief process. I had to shift all of those things I knew and take on a new understanding of there's an amazing person right here. Like, there's not all these things. She's not a terrible person. She's not screwing up. She's not hurting people. She's helping people to understand things. Like, it's okay. And so I began to learn those things myself, and then began to learn how to implement it and share it with clients and families and businesses. And I'm blown away every time. It's like magic. I call it God's magic.
Well, you and I were talking a little before the interview, and I told you that back in '87, I started doing some work with a seminar-based company on this thing called mindset. That was the base of it all. And then went through their facilitator training program and started teaching their classes. And that was in '87. And I will tell you that in '87, I was living from the neck up. So my head was in charge of everything. I wasn't even feeling the emotions. And I remember I pushed back to me, and it was like, no, I'm not responsible for that. No, they did that. It was just this really visceral kind of stuff. But I know for me personally, knowing that I actually am in charge, I'm not necessarily in charge of what comes into my head, but I'm certainly in charge of what I do with it once it's there. And that is really freeing.
Absolutely.
And so you talk about how harmful negative thinking and emotions can limit every aspect of our life. It can give us health issues. It can help hurt relationships. It can definitely, if we're coming from this place of low self-esteem and we don't matter or we're not good enough, that it's going to affect everything around us, because quite frankly, people in that space aren't much fun to be around.
Yeah.
It's hard and it's challenging. And if you love them, it's even harder. But you know that there's something different to do out there. But how does all that get started? You said yours started as a child. So how do you, I mean, where does it start showing up for us?
Well, for some children, unfortunately, it shows up early, really early. Um, I had a client once who she was all about being perfect. She had to be perfect. And her family was a beautiful family, but she was born sick and she had a lot of surgeries right away. And so the family was all about, it's okay, you're going to be okay. We're going to make it through. We're going to get and so they didn't ever really give her time to deal with the emotion she was going through. So it was next thing, we got this. It's okay. It's okay. And so kind of like you were saying, sometimes people can be such a drain and a negative energy. Sometimes people can be too optimistic and not give you time to let yourself have these emotions. Both our positive emotions and our negative emotions help us. I like to use the analogy of a battery. We don't say the negative side is bad and the positive side is good. We know both are needed. The same thing works with our emotions, but children are not taught that. Children are taught, oh, it's okay, don't cry, here, eat this, or read this, or do that, like avoid these emotions. And so it starts as babies, but children are not aware that they're being trained this way and shutting off their emotions. It's just a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And so they grow with it, not knowing they have these rules and all of these things they've set up. So like moms who teach children, you sacrifice. Love is sacrifice. You just give and give and give, and you just give of yourself, and it just hurts. Well, they're going to have relationships because they believe love hurts. They're going to find it.
Yeah.
So it can start so early.
And I know I have a fond memory and a not so fond memory of, I remember a lot of things before I was 4 because we moved when I was 3.5. So if it happened at that first house, I know I was under 3.5. And I was a real, what some people would call show off. I would perform. If there were more than one person in the room, when one person was in the room, I would entertain them. And I would sing and I would dance. I had a little toy ukulele I would play. I would read to them, would do all kinds of stuff. I was a really precocious little girl. And my mother encouraged me, saying, oh, Jenny, show so-and-so how you do that. And sometime around the age of 6 or 7, I started to realize that my mother wasn't approving of my behavior any longer. Stop showing off, Jenny. You always want to be the center of attention. You're getting too big for your britches. When you show off like that, other people don't get a chance. And so I realized in that moment, unconsciously, I'm sure as a child, I wasn't processing it. But, when I look back, I realized that was the moment I started to be a really good girl. And I followed all the rules because I saw my mother's love attached to it.
Yeah.
There was going to be some consequences to pay. And it was true. There really were consequences to pay. And I to this day say that I'm a recovering good girl and a recovering perfectionist with all the work that I've done, that still comes in. So I think, the work is so important, and we need people like you to help us see it, because we're in it. So we don't believe it. We believe what they said to us. We don't believe what we may be starting. We can read all the books, we can do all the other stuff, but until we actually get to experience it, it's really challenging. So I know that you have a story, I believe, and you told a little bit of it. I'm getting a little ahead of myself here then. Is there anything else you want to say? Well, here's what I want to know. So you had this story, you grew up in this place of not good enough, I should be perfect, I should, just all the rules that had to be followed, which weren't really about rules. They were about ways you were supposed to be in the world. They weren't universal rules. When did you start to actually, I know you talked a little bit about how you started to heal from it, but when did you actually start to wake up a little bit and go, something wrong here? Because there can be a big gap between that beginning to notice that maybe mom and dad weren't always right, to that place of actually being able to do something about it. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, interestingly, I believed they were right for a long time. And that is what reinforced my negative belief with myself. And it just was true. I remember at, 4 or 5 years old, I had 2 options. I wanted to move out of the house. That was my goal. Everything.
4 or 5, did you say?
That was my goal. People ask, what do you want to be when you grow up? I just wanted to turn 18 and get out. I'll be 18. That's what I want to do when I grow up. I want to turn 18. And then the other was I always thought about dying.
Wow.
And it wasn't, it wasn't something I was ever going to do because I knew I was afraid of pain. Fortunately, I didn't know about softer ways of death.
Mhm.
But it was something that was always with me. And it was just like, but I was also afraid to die because I knew I was bad and I knew I was going to hell. And so that was another fear of why I would not do it. So it was this spin, like I wanted it to end. And that's what I have found out for clients who have any thoughts around suicide. Their pain is just strong. If you can help the pain, those thoughts, they don't stay. And so for me, I didn't know they were wrong until I ended up in college and I was 17 at the time. No, 18. It was my second year. And I took my first psychology class
Mhm.
and it was child development. And I was sitting in class learning about children behavior and it was like a ton of bricks hit me. This is normal behavior. This was all normal behavior. Are you kidding me?
Mhm.
I was just a normal kid. That was huge. And it also dawned on me, like all these little children who are being taught this and who are going through this and who think this about themselves, and not just teenagers, or not just little kids, but teenagers especially, and in high school. And they're just being told all these terrible things or believing all these terrible things about themselves from TV, from their parents, or from, just the stuff they might make up themselves. And so in that moment, I was like, everybody needs to know this. What the heck? Why doesn't everybody know this? Because not everybody goes to college. Not everybody learns about psychology. And even then I realized some of the psychology courses, they don't go in depth in things, which I didn't get until my 30s, fast forward 15 years. So it is like you say, I did get it in college, but I didn't know how to shift it.
Mhm.
I did years and years of work. I did, like you had said, I had done a lot of mindset work. I got involved at 17, really young, because I wanted to find anything to not be my parents, anything. And so when I found something, I was like, oh, and I would just try and try and try. And that was actually part of my thing. I was never good enough. So I would do the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. But none of it really got to me until my 30s. And I began to learn about resetting the mind. And not because somebody's teaching me, but how to reset my own mind. That was what was missing out of everything that was taught. They were teaching me to do it, but they weren't teaching me to step back and look at what I was doing, because it's
Mhm.
more group training. And so even the therapists, they were great, but I never got this. But when I began to learn how we are practicing our own programming, we are the programmers, and we programmed it from this programming proof of our parents and our culture and the things we saw, or our siblings, how they treated us, or just beliefs that we made up. That's when it changed. So it took me into my 30s. And that's why I say, if somebody's dealing with this stuff, don't wait. Whatever age you are now is perfect. And I've worked with 50, 60, 70-year-olds who finally have a good relationship with their parents or their kids, or so there's no too late either.
Right, right. I love that you took this college course and you started your eyes just were opened and you saw, wow, that wasn't true. That wasn't true. And then there's a lot of pain associated with that. I think. And then what do you do with it, right? So you didn't have anything to do with it at that point. I know one of those watershed moments for me are those, I think, um, like what they call them, like a pivotal moment or a place where we take a different path. I was 32 and I was going through a divorce. I hadn't really done much work on myself yet. And well, I didn't know I was going through a divorce yet. We were in couples therapy and things weren't working out as a couple. So the therapist decided he would work with my husband and referred me to someone else and referred me to this wonderful woman who worked out of her home. And I've never known anyone who did anything like that out of their home. I thought that was weird to start. But to be brief, I'll just tell you, I walked in, she was very warm, and she sat back in her chair like she had all the time in the world. And she said, so Jenny, what's going on? And I really didn't know how to answer it because nobody had actually asked me that question before.
Yeah.
And what I knew though is that I was doing some things that I didn't like about me and my marriage because of what he was doing. I was then doing, I was reacting in certain ways. And I said, I really don't like how I'm being in my marriage. And she got up and she walked around. She sat down next to me She took my hand, she looked me right in the eye and she said, well, guess what, Jenny? You don't have to do it that way anymore. And I said, I don't. And it's kind of like reading that textbook, Tammy. The shutter opened and some light got in. And once you know it, you can't not know it, you know? And so even if you don't jump on it right away and do something, it's there and you can't not know it. So that was a pivotal point for my life that brought me to where I am right now. So I love what you said about it doesn't matter how old you are. Because I mean, I was ashamed that I was 32 and didn't know that yet. And then I had to learn compassion for that young woman who actually had the courage to go learn that.
Yes.
You know? So I know you need a lot of tools that you share. Would you share some of the tools with us, with our listeners today?
Sure. So the idea around this work is there's different steps, and with each person, it's very individual. But they're going to go through most of the same steps. They're going to begin just like you did, learning about what do you think? What are those thoughts going on? You know, and how much of them are a solid thought that moves you forward versus a limiting belief that you've just been practicing because you've just been practicing. And so becoming aware of what your thoughts are, becoming aware of what your beliefs are, becoming aware of your emotions, learning how to set boundaries with yourself and others in a way that a lot of people say, but I don't want to be a jerk. Or, you know, I can't ever say no. Or, you know, I always say no because, you know, so being able to set boundaries for both yes and no, and how to do that. And practicing, implementing is so important. I've had people that's their first session, oh, this will be easy. I just need to learn how to communicate and it'll be fine. And then when they're practicing, then they wake up and then they start to look. And at the same time, the other tools that I'm helping them to do is reflecting. So as they're speaking with me, I'm reflecting back to them what I just shared with them. So then they're hearing themselves in a different, well, I didn't mean to say it like that. Okay, so hold on. It's okay. What if when you said it that way, you meant something by it? Let's take a look at why it came out that way, or what that way meant, and or why you feel like you couldn't say it that way. What's having you feel that that's not okay? There's so many beliefs that people think they're not okay. We go over negative beliefs, and so much of the time it's okay. We don't have to judge that. We're going to learn from it. That's what we're here for. Most of the time people see it and they don't know what to do with it except judge it, where we create an open space of judgment free. And this is what you're thinking about. This is what you're feeling about. Cool. Is it helping? Okay, cool. We'll keep it. Is it not? Most of the time not. So then let's shift. What can we do differently? And a lot of times they need a lot of guidance and support on being able to do that. And so we just role play and practice. And so it's practical. What's the word I'm looking for? Applying it. Implementing was the word. So that way they're able to practice with whoever they're having trouble with. They're setting boundaries with whoever they had trouble with before. They're setting boundaries with themselves. Sometimes they're imposing on other people. They don't realize it, their expectations. So each one of those steps and tools is always a little bit different and coming at different times based on what's coming up for each individual. And sometimes if I'm working with a child or an adult child, they'll bring in their parent. Or if I'm working with a spouse, they'll bring in the spouse, or, you know, whoever is needed. And even if I'm virtual, so even if the child is in college away, we still get to do the work together. And I've had people where I've had to say to them, tell me what you hear me saying. And they'll, well, I think it, and then they go to their, no, tell me what you hear me saying. Well, you said, and I think, right, they don't tell me what I said. And I have to take them by the hand, like your counselor did. Tell me exactly my words, and then you can respond. And they can't. And so then I have to say, okay, I'm going to tell you again, just repeat back. And so oftentimes there's various skills of listening and skill building and being able to hear themselves where they haven't before. So it's always going to depend a little bit on each person. And it's interesting, like that woman who I helped to do that in that moment for the first time was able to hear what her son was saying now that I had her try it next with him.
Wow, that is really powerful. because we do filter everything we hear through our own system, through our own beliefs, attitudes, all of that stuff. And it comes out
Goggles.
as yeah, it comes out as like, I think. No, you're not asking them to, what do you think about what they said? You're asking them, what did they say? And that's such a, I mean, it sounds like a really simple tool, but if we've been programmed to always, especially to be defensive, if it's a relationship that kind of has a lot of a back and forth, if we're defensive, we automatically jump into what we think. And we don't even often say what we feel, which is important to do as well.
And
but
they never ask for what you need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a whole other story, isn't it, about programming of you're not supposed to ask for what you need. I remember being told as a child, I couldn't even ask for a glass of water if we were at a friend of my parents' house. I had to wait till they offered me something. It was just this, I was perfect. I could put me up on a little shelf and you could dress me up and I could just sit there and smile and be perfect. And then what happens, you know, let's talk about women specifically. So you're a business owner now. So what happens is, you know, we grow up with these not good enoughs. We grow up with these, you shouldn't be, you know, children should be seen and not heard. Don't brag about yourself. Don't talk about yourself. And then we're out there either in a career doing, you know, wanting to move forward, or we're out there starting a business when we're supposed to be full of ourselves. We're supposed to be able to talk about what we're good at. Have you seen that get in the way of women specifically? Talk a little bit about that.
I see it for men and women, but as far as with women specifically, you know, like you said, we're taught to be good little girls. And so trying to get outside of that box is really difficult, especially, and not just women, but women who are nurturers, women who are used to taking care of others first. So now, wait, you're telling me I need to put me first and share about me? And honestly, that's even been something I've had to work with. Anyone who's dealing with that not good enough stuff, it's like here. That's why I also have my own coach. And it can get in the way of the amount you make. It can get in the way of how you market yourself. It can get in the way of the right kind of client. It can get in the way of what you're asking for the amount that you deserve. It can get in the way of trying to balance work and family. Brings in a lot of guilt, a lot of shame. Women who are really strong sometimes can go too hard and be abrasive, or they're going just right, but they have the wrong people around them who put them, you know, got to put them in their place, or, you know, present them as though they're abrasive. So it can show up in so many ways. And yes, really, really keep a woman held down. Sure.
I know for me, when I started to get a clue, before I actually got help with it, but I started to really, I got angry. I got super angry. And so I was that woman who, damn it, I'm going to move up in this career and I'm going to, and, you know, don't you mess with me kind of, but, you know, in a sweet Southern kind of exterior, you know, and I didn't realize how defensive I was about everything, because I was so tired of people making decisions for me. And so I became the non-nurturer until I had a child. And then I was really like wrapped up and in love with him. But still, he was raised to be independent. He was raised to not ask mom for everything and not expect mom to drop everything she was doing so that he could do everything he wanted to do. And so I think that it can go either way. We can become doormats, or we can become kind of like ball busters to not just to that. And neither extreme is great for us, right?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't get us the results that we deserve or for others in our lives.
Yeah.
And especially as a parent, without meaning to, children are little sponges, right? They're little mirrors, or they're doing the opposite. Like they're swinging, you know, one way or the other. Like, I want to be like that, or I don't want to be like that. So I've had many parents who they see those things showing up in their children and they're just like, oh, wait. We got to work on that.
I'm really grateful that I started to get a clue around the time my son was 3. And so I got to model something a bit different from him. And he's pretty well-adjusted 40-year-old man. You know, I really, I'm very proud of him and who he is as a human.
Wonderful.
Well, let's talk about, you also do hypnotherapy. Do you do hypnotherapy with every client, or is it just whatever you think they may need?
Well, yes. And one main point I want everyone to know is every single person practices hypnosis. Every single person. You're practicing self-hypnosis every single day. So when I'm doing hypnotherapy, I'm training people how they're using their own programming. That's what think about when you've meditated And when you're not just meditating to relax, but you're meditating for a change. Most people meditate on what they don't want. That is negative self-hypnosis. If we meditate on what we do want and move our mind in this direction in relaxed states, whether it's through humor or whether it's through through meditation or whether it's through affirmations, but also cleaning up the mess. A lot of times we're like positive, 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 positive. If you don't clean up the mess, you can positive all day long, right? I can be positive. I'm not going to get wet when I go out in the rain, but the results are still going to happen.
Yeah, and I can really fake my way through being happy.
Yeah, yeah.
And pretending like everything's okay. And that's been another thing that I think we've been trained in.
Yes.
Is to not let
Totally.
people see when we're sad, not people see when we're hurt.
Right.
And to own those emotions. I don't know if you ever heard of this term spiritual shaming. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Something I came across a few years ago, and I actually did a talk about it for a local spiritual center on how when people are in, like in their spirituality, they could be in it for a while or they could be growing within it, but something happens and they don't handle it the way that other people think they should. Then it's, oh, well, you just caused that. You just created that for yourself. Well, I think that's true, but don't you tell me, you're not my person. You're not my therapist. But kind of throwing, well, you should just change your thinking. Have you ever heard that one? Just change your thinking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's,
yeah. And it
like
leaves
that.
people don't really understand. And one thing I always say this, it's to be a little humorous, but it certainly was true. I felt like people in their good advice would leave me to feel not very Christian. Because it's like I wanted to punch him in the nose.
Yeah.
It's like,
And
you're good
often they're
advice.
well-meaning people and they're coming from their
Yes.
own fears and their own place because that's
Right.
what they believe. That's what they've downloaded. That's what they've
Totally.
thought.
And
But
even
yet,
if it's good advice, if you're not showing me how, I know that I don't know how to do it is the problem.
just make me feel worse. You're right.
Right. So that's a big piece of what with my clients, I will take you by the hand and I will show you how. If you're afraid of making calls, I will be on that call with you and then we'll take a look at what was it you were thinking? What negative thought did you have that got you all scared? What did you think that got you better? And we would practice beforehand. Or if they need to talk to somebody, we practice. It's about getting yourself in the place you want to and then doing it. And then seeing what you need to do after you've done it. So then you can take on those goals and those things that you thought were in your way, shift out of your way.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for all of that. So you talked about how you work with clients. So how will people find out more about your work and how might they get in touch with you?
Well, through your sharing. They can reach me through my phone number over here, 954-657-3407. They can personal message me. For me, it's best phone calls, text messages, but they could reach me by email. They can reach me through Facebook, Instant Messenger, any of the social medias. Really, it's just about reaching out. I do a free consult. At this time, I'm doing the discounted consult. And I work with people on what they can afford. So we make the program happen on what's best for them, what package is looking right. And sometimes people will do a package just to see how it is at first, and then they'll get a bigger package. And, so it's really about working with people on where they need. So reaching out for that consult would probably be the best way to get started. And if they're not ready or they want to learn more, I have a free Facebook page. It's called Freedom from Negative Thinking. And on Wednesday, I do a free live. So any questions or challenges they have, they can ask about, and I give them advice or ideas or tools they can practice.
So lots of ways. So Freedom from Negative Thinking is Tammy's Facebook group where you can get free, great wisdom from Tammy every Wednesday, did you say?
Yep, every Wednesday at 8:15, and the group can support each other as well. And wonderful happy memes, or this is how it worked for me, or there's open room for that as well.
Okay, and then right behind Tammy, you'll see that she's got all these other ways that you can reach her.
Yeah.
I love that you work with people where they are and that you have lots of options for people. And I just have to say that the first time I met you, we've never met in person, but we've met online, that you have this very calming, loving presence that I think must work so well for some clients. You're just perfect for a certain type of client, I know, especially someone who has not felt very loved and nurtured and had their hand held. And it's a non-judgment zone, it feels like, with you, Tammy. So congratulations on finding this great work and what you're doing to help others. And is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I think a number one thing is to realize that people, and you, right, people, we're just doing things the way we know how. There is nothing wrong with the way that you're doing things. There's This was just your way to cope and get through life. You're doing everything that you know how to do, and it's important to give yourself credit for that, even if all it is getting out of bed, in a day, or, taking a look at what it is you're able to accomplish and celebrating that. The way that you're doing it is not your fault. Knowing that you can take it on and do it different, that's the important thing.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. And I remember in the early days of doing work on myself, I heard someone said, well, your parents did the best job they could. And I said, no, they didn't. And then I heard your parents did the best job they knew how, given what they knew.
Mm-hmm.
And that was true. So
And
there's the languaging made a big difference for me because it felt like I was letting somebody off the hook a little bit if I were to buy into that other thing. But yeah, we all do the best we can. You just said that we do the best we can with where we are and what we have and what we've been given. But the great news is we can shift that at any time we choose to, and by getting some help from someone like you. So thank you so much, Tammy, for being with us today and sharing all your wonderful wisdom and tools. And I thank you for joining us for the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show. And I thank all of you out there for joining us for this in the On Purpose Woman Magazine and Global Community Facebook page. We do have 4 interviews next week. On Monday, Catherine Yarborough, the other host of the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show, will interview Lilia Shoshana Ray, and they'll talk about who said purpose work can't be fun. On Tuesday, I'll interview Laura DeFranco about how your brave words can change the world. On Thursday, Catherine will talk with Francine Julin about how joy is your birthright. And that's probably something else that you teach people, Tammy, is that since you were born, you have a right to be here, right? I think I may have read that somewhere that you wrote that. I don't know where, but. And then on Friday, I'm going to interview Carla Johnston, who will share a wise woman path to living a nurtured life. So lots of really great stuff coming up. To see all the other scheduled interviews, go to the On Purpose Woman magazine, onpurposewomanmagazine.com, and you'll see a 4-page spread with all of our topics. And if you love this interview and you want to share with your friends, it will be on our YouTube channel in the next 48 hours. So go on over to the On Purpose Woman Global Community on YouTube, sign up, subscribe, and you want to sign up for notifications. There are already more than 60 inspiring, educational, fun, and informative shows for you to watch on our channel. And I want to thank you again for watching the Real Women, Real Purpose talk show.
Yay.
Amen.